Yeah. Oh. Hello, everyone. Welcome to 2026. Today is Saturday, January 3rd, 2026. So this is our first podcast installment of the new year. Kind of a palate cleanser that we would step back and look at some ancient wisdom on the topic of music. And I think there might be some other, classical texts of music theory from the various classical traditions. But today I felt that we could look at the Analects of Confucius. And Confucius talks about music as part of his larger worldview. 6th century BC, contemporary to Buddha and Lao Tzu and all that. You know all that. And so I'm not going to be talking about Confucian philosophy altogether, but we are the basic principles of joining the ideas of heaven, earth, and humans as it's a kind of a humanism, a cosmic humanism, joining sort of earth principle and above and below, microcosm, macrocosm, and music has an important place in Confucian philosophy, along with ritual, along with ancestor worship, connecting to mortality through the dead, and through tradition. Music is very important. So I'm just going to sort of skip through the Analects of Confucius and look at a couple of phrases which are relevant to the idea of music as an uplifting social force. And again, in our perception here, this is the title of this podcast is Art is the Church of God the Creator. Art is the Church of God the Creator. And we say that with a smile but we say it because we mean it. And again, what we mean when we say this on this podcast is that when we say God the Creator, we're saying that there is something uniquely important and valuable about our sensory perceptions. We say that our human sense perceptions are uniquely valuable, and we are not afraid to use theological language. We can call our sensory perceptions sacred. And we can say that the sacredness of our sense perceptions is analogous to the concept of God the Creator, and that human creativity works through the human sense perceptions, through sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. And music works through sound perception, through sonic perception, and through sonic attention, through the receptive skills of sonic attention and through the productive skills of sonic production. And So we don't think here of music as a entertainment or like blowing off steam or just sort of like a temporary catharsis. We think of it as actually an expression as a revelation of God. This is what we think of music, and we're not on a crazy megalomania or egotism, or even though we use the G word here, we're not using that to like puff up an ego trip. So from the introduction here, from the Analects of Confucius, translated and annotated by Arthur Waley, a quick overview. Music and dancing. I can't speak Mandarin Chinese, so please forgive any terrible mispronunciations I would have of classical Chinese. So Arthur Waley, the translator, says here, our view of music as an agreeable arrangement of sounds listened to solely for enjoyment, and of dancing as a means of social distraction combined with mild bodily exercise, is a very abnormal one. My comment here is, unfortunately, we have that very great and very unmusical philosopher Immanuel Kant, in his Aesthetics, for that idea of music as just a kind of purely like perfume or whatever, just as a as a completely decorative thing. And what can I say? I don't trust a philosopher who is tone deaf, but there have been many such tone deaf philosophers. Very few philosophers have been genuinely musical, and a lot of the musical philosophers, like Nietzsche or Schopenhauer, are also really misguided. I mean, I really honestly don't know who I can say really has a truly musical understanding. I mean, Adorno, Plato, what do you think? Anyway, I mean, what can we say? I mean, Aristotle's idea of music is really just that it's background for theater. He didn't seem to have a deep understanding of music as his teacher Plato did. Anyway, let's get back here. From the introduction here. Everywhere during the greater part of man's history, and by a large portion of the world's inhabitants even today, these related arts are regarded in a way wholly different from the way which we regard them. Music, in the view not only of primitives, but that of almost all non-European peoples, exerts a magic power not only over the heart of man, as we in Europe would to some extent admit, but also over the forces of nature. Everyone familiar with early Chinese books knows the story, existing in countless variants, of the Duke of Ping of Qin and the baleful music, how drawn by the magic of an evil tune, 8 huge blackbirds swooped from the south and danced on his turrets. Black clouds blotted out the sky, the tempest tore down the hangings of his palace, broke the ritual vessels, hurled down the tiles from the roof. The king fell sick, and for 3 years no blade of grass grew in Qin, no tree bore fruit. A similar view of magic power of music over the forces of nature still prevails in India. It is by music and dancing that rain is produced all over Africa, just as it was in ancient China. I do not think Confucius would have questioned the possibility of music possessing such power. But it was to the music of the divine sages and not to the songs of Wei and Cheng that he attributed it, and this music of the ancients had all but disappeared. I would say that the same attitude of music as having a cosmic and medicinal power is very powerful in Plato, of course. I mean, and we all know examples from the Republic, etc. So this, the music of the succession dance, the Sha, which Confucius characterizes as perfectly beautiful, apparently did not exist in Lu. Later, the legend regarded the accession music of the divine sage Shun, but it also figures in the Chu dance. We do not know whether Confucius regarded any of the magical music of the sages as surviving in his time. When he heard the succession music, he did not notice what he was eating for 3 months afterwards. This gives the impression that Confucius's whole being was profoundly stirred by the performance, much in the same way as the young Bach was moved by the organ playing of Buxtehude. And indeed, if we could register the exact physiological reactions in the two cases, we might as well find that they were very much the same. Everyone knows, or should know, that when that Dietrich Buxtehude was Johann Sebastian Bach's childhood idol, and that as soon as he was able to, when he was 16 years old, he walked on foot 200 miles from where was he was he in Lübeck or Weimar? And he walked to all the way up to the North Sea. I mean, where Buxtehude was up by Hamburg, and just to hear him play in person, So the and indeed, if we could register, they're very much the same. We should be mistaken if we suppose that Confucius's conscious attitude toward music, his interpretations of his place in life, concorded in the least with that of a European musician. To him, as to the ancient Greeks, it was important above all as an instrument of education. It promotes virtue. It is an intrinsic part of the way that causes gentlemen to love other gentlemen and makes small men easy to rule. Okay, so that is our view of music, that it promotes virtue, and by actually working directly with, by using proportional vibrations, by using exact pitch, exact interval, and exact rhythm, so that we can practice entrainment through our brainwaves and through our attention, and so that we can actually attune ourselves to the actual ratios which exist in the universe itself. I'm going to skip to book 2 of the Analects. I'm just going to skip around and just read a couple of passages and make some passing comments. And I hope it's food for thought, and I hope it's valuable for you. So, from book 2, aphorism or Analect 4, the master said, "At 15, I set my heart upon learning. At 30, I had planted my feet firm upon the ground. At 40, I no longer suffered from perplexities. At 50, I knew what were the biddings of heaven. At 60, I heard them with docile ear. At 70, I could follow the dictates of my own heart, for what I desired no longer overstepped the boundaries of right." For me, the key phrase there in relation to music is it says here, at 60 I heard them with a docile ear. At 50 I knew what were the biddings of heaven. At 60 I heard them with a docile ear. Okay. Book 2, 11. The master said, "He who by reanimating the old can gain knowledge of the new is fit to be a teacher." Okay? He who by reanimating the old can gain knowledge of the new is fit to be a teacher. Well, that's as true in music as it is in any other field. We have to reanimate the old in order to gain knowledge of the new. Yes. And 12. The master said, "A gentleman is not an implement." 13. Zukung asked about the true gentleman. The master said, "He does not preach what he practices till he has practiced what he preaches." So we can relate that to the idea of musical practice. And again, what is musical practice? There's 2 types of musical practice. There's listening, which is the practice of one-pointed non-dual attention, and there is the practice of performing, which is the production of exact pitch and exact interval and exact rhythm. And by pitch, we mean specific, discrete, whole number overtones of a single fundamental. And by exact interval, we mean whole number low prime ratios. And either in depending upon the limit universe that we're in. Obviously in a drone music, in a monochord, that is a sort of, a one limit. If we're talking about perfect fifths only, it's a 3 limit universe. If we are including major thirds and the diatonic intervals, it's a 5 limit universe. And if we are talking chromatics if we are embedding the diatonic scale within a 12 tone per octave chromatic universe in terms of modulatory classical Western art music, then we are talking about the augmented scale. So it's a 5 limit, but including the 5 squared as opposed to 5-1. Sort of that would include the augmented triad as a fundamental sonority, as opposed to simply the fifths, the major third, and the major and minor triads. Okay. So, and in terms of rhythmic precision, we have to be able to create those rhythmic relays. So we have to be able to reproduce exact pitch, exact interval, and exact rhythm with no distortion. And as precisely as possible. Again, Book 2, Analect 14. The master said, a gentleman can see a question from all sides without bias. The small man is biased and can see a question only from one side. The 17. The master said, shall I teach you what knowledge is? When you know a thing, to recognize that you know it, and when you do not know a thing, to recognize that you do not know it. That is knowledge. Okay, I think that was reminds me of Ecclesiastes. Again, the Book of Songs is referenced throughout this, so we'll come back to the Book of Songs, and the relationship of music to proper behavior and society and government are mentioned in some of these next comments here. So, Book 2, Analect 19. Duke Ai asked, what can I do in order to get the support of the common people? Master Kung replied, if you raise up the straight and set them on top of the crooked, the commoners will support you. But if you raise the crooked and set them on top of the straight, the commoners will not support you. Number 20, Book 2, 20. Chi Kang-su asked whether there were any form of encouragement by which he could induce the common people to be respectful and loyal. The master said, approach them with dignity, and they will respect you. Show piety towards your parents and kindness towards your children, and they will be loyal to you. Promote those who are worthy. Train those who are incompetent. That is the best form of encouragement. Okay, let's move on to Book 3. And there's more specific mentions of music and poetics in Book 3. Okay, Confucius Analects, Book 3, saying 3. The master said, a man who is not good, what can he have to do with ritual? A man who is not good, what can he have to do with music? So, of course, the parallelism here is goodness with music and ritual being both equal reflections of each other and of what the good in the Socratic sense, right? And, of course, coincidentally, you all know Confucius was teaching approximately at the same time as Socrates. So we can just sort of take that as a kind of synchronicity. There's a lot here about music. I'll just say here, Analect 23. When talking to the Grand Master of Lu about music, the master said, their music, insofar as one can find out about it, began with a strict unison. Soon the musicians were given more liberty, but the tone remained harmonious, brilliant, consistent, right on till the close. Well, I think this is a great description of music. I mean, music begins with a strict unison, and then there is more liberty, and the music here of the ancients, and then it becomes more. Music remains harmonious, brilliant, consistent, right until the close. What do we mean by harmonious? We mean perfectly in tune with the fundamental vibration, brilliant, going higher up through the overtone series, consistent, proportional, connected, right on till the end. And this is what musical forms do, whether in ancient Chinese music or whether it is a sonata form, which goes from 1 to 5 to 1, whether it is a variation form, which just has sort of a continuous variations of the 1, which is essentially the unison, right? Or the fugue, which is the alternation of the 1 and the 5, right? They're going back and forth between the tonic and the dominant. So actually, I think there's quite quite a lot of important musical insight in that. All right, let's move on to the next books. Books 4, books 5, and let's see what Confucius has to say that is relevant to the beneficial impacts of music and human behavior and society. Again, music being understood as an expression of the general principle of harmony. Here we go. Okay, we're skipping ahead now to Book 8, Analect 8. And, okay. The master said, "Let a man be first incited by the songs, then given a firm footing by the study of ritual, and finally perfected by music." Okay, so study, ritual, and music. And so there is first the songs, okay, then the study of ritual, prayer, contemplation, and finally perfected by music. So from like words to contemplation to the dissolving of a dualistic subjectivity in harmonious universal proportions. That's the teleology of that statement. I think there's profound wisdom in that. I'm just going to repeat that one last time. Book 8, Analect 8. The master said, "Let a man be first incited by the songs, then given a firm footing by the study of ritual, and finally perfected by music." So music is what perfects your contemplative practice. Okay. Let's find some related sayings in Book 9. Analects of Confucius, Book 9, Analect 17. The master said, "I have never yet seen anyone whose desire to build up his moral power was as strong as sexual desire." Okay, so that is, of course, that's dealing with the question of the libido, which is the survival instincts, with the aspect of God related to survival, which is not God the Creator. God the Creator is the sense perceptions, and the libido, the survival drives, that's God the Father. And moral power, goodness, is God the Son. But it's all part of the pleroma. It's all part of the totality of the Godhead. And so I think it's important to connect that to the sacredness of perceptions. The sacredness of perceptions work along together with and in conjunction with the sacredness of our survival drives, which is to say, which include the sexual drives, the aggressive drives, the fanatic drives, and the drives for moral goodness, which is the non-duality of emotion. Okay. Book 12. Analect 2, Zhang asked about goodness. The master said, "Behave when away from home as though you were in the presence of an important guest. Deal with the common people as though you were officiating at an important sacrifice. Do not do to others what you would not like yourself. Then there will be no feelings of opposition to you, whether it is affairs of a state that you are handling or the affairs of a family." Okay, well, of course, there's the golden rule there. Do not do to others what you would not like yourself, but it's applying on the macro level. Then whether it is the affairs of a state or a family, there's goodness. Okay. And so this idea of the golden rule in good government is continued in Book 12, Analect 7. Zukung asked about government. The master said, "Sufficient food, sufficient weapons, and the confidence of the common people." Zukung said, "Suppose you had no choice but to dispense with one of these three, which would you forego?" The master said, "Weapons." Zukung said, Suppose you were forced to dispense with one of the two that were left. Which would you forego? The master said, food. For from old death has been the lot of old men. But a people that no longer trusts its rulers is lost indeed. I'll just repeat that last phrase because I think it's important for us to remember. A people that no longer trusts its rulers is lost indeed. Okay. Book 12, Analects 16. The master said, the gentleman calls attention to the good points in others. He does not call attention to their defects. The small man does just the reverse of this. Okay, so let us always point out in you and you and you and me and everyone our unique excellence, our arete, all right? Which is that every human being has a unique set of inherent skills and gifts which exist only in that person, and which only that person can develop through faith and through discipline and through diligence for the benefit of the entire cosmos, of all humanity and the entire cosmos. And whatever we do here is impacting the entire universe. Absolutely, yeah. Despite the fact that we are finite and extremely challenged. Okay. Book 12, Analects 17. Shi Kangsu asked Master Kung about the art of ruling. Master Kung said, ruling, Cheng, is straightening. Cheng, if you lead along a straight way, who will dare go by a crooked one? Okay, again, in translation, it reminds me of, the prophet Elijah. And, okay, let's go forward. Let's keep this short and sweet. Let's move on to some analects from Book 13. From Book 13, Analect 3, the gentleman uses only such language as is proper for speech, and only speaks of what it would be proper to carry into effect. The gentleman, in what he says, leaves nothing to mere chance. Okay. And that's actually from a more elaborate commentary, which is really like, a whole essay. Book 13, Analect 25. The master said, the true gentleman is easy to serve, yet difficult to please. For if you try to please him in any manner inconsistent with the way, he refuses to be pleased. But in using the services of others, he only expects of them what they are capable of performing. Common people are difficult to serve, but easy to please. Even though you try to please them in a manner inconsistent with the way, they will still be pleased. But in using the services of others, they expect them, irrespective of their capacities, to do any work that comes along. Okay, so what bears repeating here is, the true gentleman is easy to serve, yet difficult to please. And I think that's true in music and art as well. All right, more specifically related to music, Book 14, Analect 13. Tsulu asked what was meant by the perfect man. The master said, if anyone had the wisdom of Tsang Wuchung, the uncovetousness of Meng Kung Cho, the valor of Chuang Tzu of Pian, and the dexterity of Jian Chu, and had graced these virtues by the cultivation of ritual and music, then indeed I think we might call him a perfect man. Okay? So once again, it is the songs, ritual, and music which lead us to perfection. That is the path of perfection as defined by Confucius. Book 14, Analect 24. The master said, the gentleman can influence those who are above him. The small man can only influence those who are below him. Okay, that's a bit of a witticism and perhaps ironic, but still it is related to the basic idea of heaven, earth, and man, of natural hierarchy, and of the non-duality of the macrocosmic and the microcosmic. So we can also interpret that not in terms of social status or snobism, but in terms of a holistic view of the universe. I would prefer to interpret it that way. Let's dip into Book 15 and Analect 12. The Master said, "In vain I have looked for one whose desire to build up his moral power was as strong as sexual desire." Again, that was a repetition from the previous. And again, looking at the different aspects of the constitutive human faculties. When we talk about God the Creator, we're talking about the human sense perceptions, the sacredness of the human sense perceptions, but it's not only the sense perceptions that are sacred and a reflection of divineness. The non-dual sense perceptions, when we experience our sense perceptions non-dually, that is the experience of beauty, right? But the experience of goodness is the non-duality of our emotion. And the experience of truth is the non-duality of our reason. And the non-duality, the experience of joy is the non-duality of our libidinal drives, of our subconscious drives. And the experience of love is the non-dual experience of our existence itself, which is to say, on the physical level, our autonomic functions, our breathing, our heartbeat, our biorhythms. When we experience these not only in ourselves but non-dually in outside of ourselves and others, this is when we that is love. That is actually, breathing and heartbeat with. There's so much more and wisdom in the world of Confucius, but I just wanted to read a few short passages which I think relate directly to the idea of art is the Church of God the Creator. So let us begin 2026 with an uplifted vision, with the vision of heaven, earth, and humanity working harmoniously together, and that we can earnestly work this year to perfect ourselves, to work through the songs, through ritual, and through music, to put ourselves in touch with the sounds, the harmonies, and the rhythms of the cosmos, which do exist, which actually exist. It's not metaphorical, it's true, they're actual, it's mathematical, it's musical, it's perceptual, we can perceive it directly, we can produce it directly, and we experience it inside of our bodies, inside of our brainwaves, inside of our breathing, inside of our pulse, and this is what I, in whatever capacity I can, am trying to work through my music, and I hope you are also working with your sense perceptions, whether it is through sound, through music, or through imagery, through visual art, or through cuisine, through gustatory art, or through fragrance, through olfactory art, or through the tactile arts, such as textiles and clothing and so on and so forth. Let us cultivate our sensory perceptions from a non-dual perspective, both in terms of those that we receive in attention and those that we produce through our skills and through our gifts and through our discipline. Okay, so I think that'll be it for today. And so this has been Greg Muna, aka Master Mu, reminding us all that art is the church of God the Creator, and see you soon. Okay. Happy New Year. Have a great 2026, and I'll be in touch with you very soon.